Hi, and welcome back to Wounded on Sixes. Today we're going to be going over the AdMech unit tier list for Warhammer 10th edition. Since the internal balance of the AdMech's codex is a bit skewed, the matrix for this tier list will work a little different. The list will try to focus on units that factor the most in detachments, paying special weight to them being good in the three most widely agreed upon detachments being the best in the codex, those being Rad Cohort, Skitarii Hunter Cohort, and the Halo Screed Battleclade. This is not to discount the other detachments in the codex, and they will be considered somewhat. Remember that these are just my opinions based on games played in Warhammer 40K 10th edition, as well as my list building preferences. You may share a different opinion, and I hope you do, and share that opinion down in the comments below so that me and the rest of the community can improve and grow. So I'm going to go over which each of the different tiers, what they are, what they mean for each of the units that are going to go inside them. So first we have auto includes, and these mean the units that are going to go in any list that you build for AdMech. In fact, they're probably going to be the ones that you always start your list out with. Next, we have good in most detachments. This means that they work in pretty much any detachment in the codex, but especially in the big three: Rad Cohort, Skitarii Hunter Cohort, and the Halo Screed Battleclade. Next, we have decent. These are okay options. They can fit into any detachment, but they're kind of only super efficient in a few of them. And toward the end of this list might be some of your first cuts. Next, we have Fringe. These are units that maybe have a purpose in a certain list or a certain detachment because the detachment may skew that way. But otherwise, these are probably just going to be units that you're including in very casual or narrative play games. And finally, Dusty. These are basically just units that are not really that good, not really worth the points, and probably not something that you should be including in your list. So, first off, we're going to start with the battle line units, and the battle line units are really great in the Adeptus Mechanicus because a lot of the data sheets in the Codex do get buffs based on their proximity to battle line units. And the AdMech have two battle line units, the Rangers and the Vanguard. So we're going to be going over the Rangers first. They're pretty good. They're only about 85 points. They have a 6-inch scout move. They also have sticky objectives, which is fantastic. Their main guns are nothing to write home about, but you can give them a sniper rifle, you can give them an anti-vehicle, you can give them a big plasma gun if you want. They can do a lot, and again, you want as many of these as your list design will fit because many of the codexes that you're going to see are going to require these guys to get the most amount of their buff. So I think that the Rangers are a fantastic option and an auto include. Next, we have their 95 point counterparts, the Skitarii Vanguard. These guys are also pretty much just as good. They don't have the sticky objectives or the scout move, but they do -1 the OC of enemy units within 3 of them, which means they can really take over an objective, and their guns are not bad. They're only strength 3, but they're anti-infantry 4, so it's pretty good if you ask me. And if you can get some AP with them by being in the Conqueror Doctrina, then that's also good as well because you're going to get the AP from them naturally, and it's going to really take out enemy units. It's a lot of shots too. If you add a Skitarii Marshal in there, you get a lot of rerolls as well. So I really like the Vanguard, although they're a little bit more pricey. So I'm going to put them just behind the Rangers. In ninth edition, this probably would have been reversed, but here, because they're 10 points more expensive, I'm going to put them just behind Rangers because you can fit more Rangers, and really you want as many Skitarii units as you can get in there. Next, we're going to move to the Sicaran Infiltrators, and the name says it all. These guys infiltrate. They're really, really good units. They move 8. They're 2 wounds. They have an ability to force battle shock and can even -2 to that leadership test if they're within range of battle line, which makes them fantastic. Their taser goads are pretty good. They have a lot of sustained hits on them. They work in a lot of different detachments, especially Skitarii Hunter cohort. But even not that, Rad cohort really likes them too, because Rad cohort is kind of all about move blocking and keeping your opponent hemmed into their deployment zone. So these guys have a lot of utility, and I also like bringing them in the Halos Creed as well. They basically have a utility all around the codex just because of that infiltrate ability. So I'm going to put them in good in most attachments. Next, we have the Sakaran Ruststalkers, and this is one of my favorite Adeptus Mechanicus units. It's a love-hate relationship. I have about 20 of them. I built and painted them all myself, and they're a real pain in the butt. But that being said, they did get a glow up recently in one of the in one of the updates, and they got more attacks, and they already had devastating wounds on one of their weapons. They had anti-infantry on the other, and they all have precision. So they're pretty good at taking out an enemy character model, especially if they're in combat with a unit that has an enemy character model, because there's enough attacks that you might do enough damage to kill them. My problem with precision weapons is that sometimes it may not be enough to kill the enemy unit, so is it worth doing it? They definitely are a good unit, but they're also kind of a glass cannon. They do not like to be charged. So if you're going to bring this unit, you definitely want to be making sure that they are doing the charging. Good in Skitarii Hunter cohort, great in Halos Creed Battleclade. They do definitely have some play in the Rad cohort, but other detachments as well. Because they're so ubiquitous around the Codex, I think I'm going to put them in good in most attachments, but they're definitely going to be behind the infiltrators because, like I said, they do take a lot of skill, but also they do get a buff from the battle line units by giving them +2 to advance, +2 to charge, giving them a Halos Creed token, allowing them to advance and charge. I mean, the unit can get all the way across the board. Again, a lot of utility, but a glass cannon, so be very careful with them. Next, we have the Corpus Scari Electro-priest. Now, these guys, along with the Fulgurite Electro-priest, are two units that I kind of want to like, but I kind of don't. The Fulgurites are not that great. They just don't have a lot of attacks, although they do have devastating wounds. They used to get mortal wounds on the charge, which was really fantastic, and they just don't have that anymore. They only get 2 attacks. They're decent in the Tech Priest detachment. The problem is these are the only 2 Tech Priest units. The Corpus Scari are okay. Even in that one, I don't think that they're that great. But the Fulgurites are way better in that detachment. But that's about it. Both can get some utility out of the Halos Creed with a stratagem to allow them to get out of a transport and still shoot or charge. You know, that's okay. The Corpus Scari are kind of a target for the crit on 5s stratagem from Halos Creed. So, I mean, that is a pretty good ability if you add into that their ability to get it -1 AP from being in the Conqueror Doctrine and within 6 of a battle line unit, can get their gun up to doing a lot of damage, but I think you need a unit of 10 of them no matter what. So they're definitely going to have to come with a transport. I think the way that I'm going to rate these is I'm going to put this Corpus Scari at decent, and I'm going to put the Fulgurites at fringe. I mean, I really think the Fulgurites are only good in the Data Psalm Conclave detachment, which is not very much played. And I think that the Corpus Scari are okay. They're okay in certain situations, but really just 1, maybe 2 detachments. They're okay. We're then going to move on to the Tauraxi sterilizers, and these are your standard fire bats. They're pretty good. They get to re-roll the wound roll if they're within 6 of battle line. You can also do that in Overwatch, which is nice. I'm pretty sure. Let me double check that before I start giving out some bad information, but I'm pretty sure that you can use their ability. Yes, you can. So you can use their ability in Overwatch to reroll the wound roll if you're within 6 of battle line, which is really nice. Um, and I mean that's really what they're good for is a drop down and in an opponent's territory, maybe score some points, and then if they come at you, Overwatch them and re-roll the wound roll if you have some guys close to it. They also get to re-roll wound rolls of 1 naturally if they're not within 6 of the battle line. So they're pretty decent, and they're pretty cheap too at 80 points for 5. They also do like a decent job move blocking. So they're definitely worth an inclusion. Are they like the best unit in the Codex? No, but they're decent, so that's why we're going to put them in the decent category. Next, we have the Tauraxi Skystalkers, and these guys have definitely a little bit more play, particularly in a lot of the competitive builds that you'll see out there. More specifically, the ones that are relying on move blocking to kind of keep you hemmed into your deployment zone. I'm talking Rad cohort, but even Skitarii Hunter cohort. These guys are Skitarii infantry, so they do get the buffs there. They're even decent in Halo's Creed as well. I mean, their ability to shoot and scoot is really good. I mean, they can move up to 12 inches if they end within range of a battle line unit, so that's a lot of movement for them. Again, they're good in the Overwatch as well. They can definitely really be a good move blocking unit, and in a competitive sense and in a good gameplay sense, they are good in most attachments that you're going to take. So that's the category we're going to put them in. We're actually going to put them just ahead of the Rust Stalkers there. I think that's definitely where they belong. But again, good unit to bring, has a lot of utility. That shoot and scoot is surprisingly brilliant at times. Next, we have the Cerberus Raiders, and these guys are really good too. Their Tactica Obliqua reactive move can be really useful. They have a scout move. They move 12. They're pretty quick. Their weapons and guns are nothing to write home about, although they do have dev wounds on their carbines and Mechanicum pistols. But yeah, these guys are really just good for, scout play, scoring, being on the edges. There's so many secondaries that these guys are great at scoring in a game. I'm thinking containment. I'm thinking behind enemy lines. I'm thinking engage on all fronts. You can even stick them in a ruin and do sabotage with them, and you don't really mind losing them because they're only 60 points, and they can move. They can be all over the board, and they're really good in a lot of different lists. I mean, there's a lot of move blocking capability with the Tactico Obliqua, so you definitely are going to see them in lists like Rad Cohort. They do get the buff from Skitarii Hunter Cohort, and again, they score, and that's something that I know the Halo's Creed is always looking for cheap scoring units because it's putting a lot of points into other big things. So these guys are great to bring along if you want to do that. I mean, are they the best unit in the game? No, but they're good in most attachments, so we're going to put them there. I think they're definitely behind the Rust Stalkers, though. Next, we have the Cerberus Sulfur Hounds, and these guys are only 55 points, which is okay, and they do have a line breaker ability, so I think they're, a good choice, but you should probably only in a unit of 6, just because the way their line breaker ability works. I could see them definitely working in something like a Rad cohort because you're going to want to be charging, you're going to want to be move blocking. I don't know how long these guys are going to survive. They're only T4 2 wounds, so how much move blocking you're going to do depends on how much you can keep them alive. They definitely have some play in the Skitarii Hunter cohort as well. So they are decent, but probably not as good as the Raiders. As they just don't have the type of mobility, and they don't have that reactive move. The line breaker can be good. if you're playing out for it. But again, I think it has to be a six-man unit to make the line breaker ability work. I think these guys are ahead of the Corpuscari, but I think they're behind the sterilizers. Next up, we have the Kataphron Breachers, and I don't know if a lot of people haven't played Adeptus Mechanicus out there. People that do play Adeptus Mechanicus and have played this unit this edition know these guys belong right up here in auto include. Now, there's a reason why they're one of the most expensive units right now at 160 points, and that is because they slap, and they slap pretty hard. So they have a really good anti-vehicle weapon with a rapid fire too, so that you can get 4 shots out of three out of each of them, with full rerolls if you're within 6 of battle line units. That's fantastic. They work in any list that you bring. They are broken in Halo's Creed. They work well in basically every other detachment as well, just because there's so much utility that they can do. They're good in melee, they're good in shooting, they're good in the Conqueror Doctrine, they're good in the Protector Doctrine. They just work. I usually will always run them with a Manipulus for the lethal hits, so you can do a lot with them. If you think about it this way, in the Halo's Creed, if you give the Manipulus the enhancement to allow them to be in both Doctrinas at once, the unit has heavy and assault. It has +1 weapon skill, +1 ballistic skill. It's -1 to hit in melee, and +1 to its AP if it's within 6 of battle line. It can re-roll its entire hit roll if it's within 6 of a battle line unit, and it has lethal hits from the Manipulus. It's an unbelievably broken unit, and you can bring a unit of 6 of them and give them all that at once. They're T7, so I mean, they're a pretty tough nut to crack, and they're also an infantry unit, so you can get them through things that you normally would not be able to get them through, which is fantastic. You can go through walls with these guys. They are not vehicles; they are infantry, so it's pretty cool indeed. And I think they're an auto include. You have to include them. Next, we have the destroyers, which on their own are an okay unit. They've definitely gotten better with the Halo's Creed. But I think that their best attribute is that they're Kataphrons, but they're cheap. They are only 105 for 3, whereas these are 165 for 3. So you're spending a lot more points. This is a big point discrepancy. But you're losing a lot. You don't get the rerolls with them. They do have an Overwatch on 5s, which is okay. You can equip them with a Flamer, but if you're going to Overwatch with 5s, you probably don't need the Flamer. So I don't know why you would bring it. They've gotten a little bit better with the Halo's Creed because you can mitigate their hazardous tests, which has always been a big problem with them because they're only 3 wounds. So if it fails its hazardous test, you just lose one. If they lose, you roll 3 ones, you lose the whole unit. So that could be an issue that's improved. But other than Halo's Creed, where they definitely have seen a little bit of a glow up, I think their best attribute is that they're cheap, and I think in that regard, they're kind of just decent. They're kind of like in the same area that I think of sterilizers, in that, like this decent Overwatch unit. They're pretty cheap. I kind of like what they do, but honestly, they're probably my first cut if I'm building a list. So that's where they belong in the decent category. Next, we have the Scorpius Disintegrator, and when I first started playing AdMech or this edition, I started my AdMech army in 9th edition. I wasn't totally sold on the Scorpius Disintegrator, but I've played it a lot, and what I love about it is that depending on the gun that you bring, which you should always bring the Firmite Cannon, you get +1 to hit against monsters and vehicles. And why that's key is that with that +1 to hit on monsters and vehicles, that means I can stay in my Conqueror Doctrina and +1 my weapon skill for all of my melee units and my hard hitting units that are going to be coming in to mess my opponent's army up, and still get the +1 to hit on my main anti tank piece, which is the Scorpius Disintegrator with the Thermite Cannon, which is pretty good. And, to me, that's really worth it, especially when it's a, 3 attacks, strength 12, -3, d6 +1 cannon. It's it's a real damage dealer. They're a little pricey, but they're a tough little tank. They're 12 wounds, T10. They have a lot of different weapons too. Their disruptor missiles are really good against elite infantry or lighter vehicles. They also have a bunch of cognitive stubbers, so light infantry hates to see these little gunboats too. They're just basically great in any detachment. I really like them in Halo's Creed because you can +1 their toughness or make them stealth. And like I said, you can kind of sit in a Conqueror Doctrina if you want, and still get your premium anti-tank hitting on threes, which makes them, to me, an auto include. Like, you should just be building this unit in there. The Scorpius Disintegrator, really really good. Next, we have the Ironstrider Ballistari, also known as the Chicken Walker or the Last Chicken. It's a decent unit. They're way cheaper than they were last edition. They're not as great, but they're pretty good. I mean, they have built-in advance and shoot, built-in fallback and shoot. The las cannon's not bad. The big issue, I think, is that you kind of want to run them in like units of 2, at least units of 3, if you're running Halo's Creed, just so that you can get the most out of that crits on 5 stratagem. But they're a pretty decent anti-tank piece. When you can bring 2 for 150 points, that's really good. And they come with built-in sustain too, which can be really silly. I mean, you only get 2 shots per, but they're they can really put in some damage and cause your enemy to respect a unit that is 75 points and only T7 7 wounds. It's kind of like the Piranha of AdMech, if you ask me. I really like the unit. They're not the best. I don't think they're necessarily an auto include. If you're looking for some cheap anti-tank, or you're looking for some anti-tank that you can throw a couple of buffs at, and not have to worry that they're not going to get a shot because they have advance and shoot and fall back and shoot. So I really like that. I think I'm going to put them in good in most detachments, and I'm going to put them just ahead of the Ruststalkers because they are really, really good. Next, we have the Sidonian Dragoons, and I'm only going to talk about the ones with the taser lances. You should not be bringing the Radium Giselle with these guys. The Dragoons with lances are pretty fantastic in a couple of different builds. They're really good in Rad Cohort because, you can kind of punish other units with them. Their tase lances are awesome because they're anti-walker too, with lance and sustain hits too. So these guys are bullying crisis suits. These guys are bullying dreadnoughts. These guys are bullying a lot of different units out there. The lance makes them really silly. They're a good crit on 5 target in Halo's Creed. I've really enjoyed doing that lately. Like, you can just get so many hits back with that sustain too, critting on 5s. They're a really good unit. I mean, I don't I kind of really just like them in Rad Cohort and in the Halo's Creed for sure. I'm not so sold on them in the Skitarii Hunter Cohort just because they don't really benefit from any of the buffs there. So in that regard, because they're only good in I mean, I guess they're good in other detachments too. I'm gonna kind of put them at the end here of good in most detachments. Like, they probably should be decent, like But honestly, I think if you're not taking Rad Cohort or you're not taking Halo's Creed, they probably are like shouldn't be in your list. But if they are, especially in Halo's Creed, like if this was just based on how good are they in Halo's Creed, like they would be here. They're like, I mean, I'm including them in like every list that I build right now for Halo's Creed. So I'm gonna put them in good and most detachments. Split the difference here. Next, we have the Onager Crawler, one of my favorite units in the Codex, and this is a really good tank piece. I mean, this thing is surprisingly tough. It's got some really great weapons, some really great options. The neutron lasers, a really good anti-tank piece. The twin Onager phosphor blasters are ridiculously good with a 2 damage weapon that ignores cover with twin linked 12 shots. Can't beat that right there. They have a 4-up invul, and they also can give battle line units wholly within 6 a 4-up invul as well. So they can help to keep your very important battle line units alive, which in AdMech is just so big, especially this edition, because everything's built around the battle line unit, and a lot of buffs are built around it. So these guys help to keep them alive. The casino gun's kind of fun if you're bringing Halo's Creed, but these guys are only 155 points, and they are surprisingly hard to take down. I've played a lot of games with 3 of these, and it's very rare that even one of them dies, let alone all 3 or 2 of them. Like you will just get constant shots with these guys. And if you want to play like a protector +1 your ballistic skill heavy kind of game with these guys and just sit back and shoot at your opponent, you can do that. They can also get aggressive if you want to bring the Onager variant and start like, really taking it to infantry. Like they're just like this is a really, really good tank. It looks cool. I highly recommend this, and I'm gonna put this. I'm gonna probably put it right here, right ahead of the Skystalkers. This is a fantastic tank, and especially if you're building heavy into the Skitarii, I think you need to build in a couple of these guys just because of their abilities. And next we have the Castellan robots. Now, Castellan robots essentially have their own detachment, which is okay. They're good in it. The problem with them is that they're really expensive, so that detachment doesn't work because like they're the only thing that really get buffs in it. Um, they're not good in Skitarii Hunter cohort, and I don't find them especially good in Rad cohort. They are close to auto include in Halo's Creed though, and that carries a lot of weight because you can get a lot of mileage out of this unit. Especially if you play it right. It's a difficult unit to make work. They take some finesse, but they can put out a lot of damage. They really take advantage of the Halo's Creed ability being put on them. +1 to their toughness, advance and charge really works well with them. They have some punchy, they have some shooty. You have the ability to give them +1 toughness naturally. You can give them +2 attacks to shooting or +2 attacks to melee at the beginning of your command phase with the Cybernetica Datasmith. Like they're just so they can do so much, especially in Halo's Creed, because they basically get the full benefit of the detachment. But other than that, like, and their Cybernetica cohort detachment, they're really kind of overpriced and don't do a lot. So I'm gonna put them in decent, and I'm gonna put them at the top of decent because they are super competitive in my mind in Halo's Creed. And because of their super competitive in Halo's Creed, they should be at the top of whatever tier that they're in, because Halo's Creed to me is one of the most competitive detachments that you can have. And in terms of competitiveness, we really should be weighing those options higher and higher in the list. Next, we have the flyers, and I didn't include a picture for all three. I'll kind of just go over them briefly. You essentially have a transporty one, you have a kind of a shooty one, and you have a bomber. The only good thing about these units is that they have hover, so they can start on the board. But other than that, they're really not that great. I would say the transporter one would be okay, but it's 150 points. So, I mean, if you feel like flying, flying your guys in, you could do that. But even then, it's too many points. The gun on the Stratoraptor like didn't get a glow up like the Ballistari gun got, so I don't really know if it's even worth it. And it's the most expensive at 185 points. It's a lot of points for a las gun when we can get you know las guns for way cheaper. I mean, maybe in the most casual of games, again, it's a cool looking model, but I would say get the duster out, bro, because it's going to be sitting on your shelf. Like if you're playing games of Warhammer 40K to win, it's going to get dusty. If you're playing games of Warhammer 40K to have fun and you like the model, fringe are decent, sure. I mean, again, that's kind of what the fringe category is for. But to me, just the way they're building the rest of the list here, I think that it's definitely down here at the bottom at Dusty. Next, we have the Scorpius Dune Rider, and this is essentially our transport. It's a decent transport. It's not bad. It's only 85 points. Its Cognitus array is pretty good. It can get up to 18 shots, sustain hits 1, twin length, but it's only strength 4. No natural AP, but we can get it from the Conqueror Doctrine if we're playing our cards right. Um, it's okay. It helps support the units that get out of it by allowing a reroll to the wounds. Pretty decent. Um, if you're playing a list that has a lot of Skitarii, you're probably going to be bringing a couple of these. But I would not recommend getting aggressive with Skitarii, so I tend to not bring this for them. Um, I know that this is a good unit, and there's a lot of AdMech players out there that will say that the Scorpius Dune Rider is a must, and I would agree with them. It's not my playstyle. It's just not. It just doesn't, in terms of what I'm trying to do with AdMech, the Dune Runner is not necessarily my playstyle. I think that maybe if the Electro-priest were better, like that's just that's just the way it would be. Um, that's just the like it would just be what I bring in them, but they're just not. To me, it's a decent option. A lot of people are going to be like, no, you know what? We're going to put it at a good in most. It's great in most attachments. It's the transport. It's kind of easy to say, oh, well, transports are good in most attachment when you only have one. To me, it's probably more down and decent because it's not my play style, but a lot of people, especially in the competitive scene, will say, no, you got to have the transport. So now we're going to be finishing up here with the leaders and the characters. So first off, we have the Skitarii Marshal. The Skitarii Marshal is a good leader. He's great in Skitarii Hunter cohort because most of the enhancements are built for marshals in that detachment. But he's really good in he goes into Skitarii Infantry, which Skitarii Infantry are an auto include. I don't necessarily believe he is an auto include. He does allow them to re-roll the hit roll, which is good. But he also allows them to negate battle shock once a turn, which if you're running a rad cohort unit, that's really good. Even if you're running a Halos Creed, you want to keep those guys alive. You want to keep them scoring points on an objective. They might be sitting there feeding buffs to your Kataphron breachers, and you want to make sure that they're not failing their battle shock and they're keeping those breachers alive and you're maximizing. So to me, the Skitarii Marshal is good in most attachments just because it attaches to a unit that's an auto include. Next, we have the Tech Priest Manipulus, and to me, the Tech Priest Manipulus is good in most detachments because for the same reason that we put the Skitarii Marshal in good in most detachments, we're going to put the Manipulus in good in most detachments because it's essentially an auto include with your breachers, giving them lethal hits. Lethal hits is fantastic, especially when you have a unit that has full rerolls. So to me, including him with a unit of 6 breachers is just it's good in every list. It just really is. You don't necessarily have to bring the lethal hits because the unit's good enough without it. But if you're looking for max greed, good in most attachments with that Manipulus. Next up, we have the Tech Priest Dominus. Now, the Dominus is not as good. He is best in Electro-priest, and Electro-priest are not that good. In certain cases, they are. The Dominus model is a great looking model. Its ability to make those Electro priests super hardy is fantastic. It gives them a 4-up feel no pain, which is pretty good when you have a 5-up info and a 4-up feel no pain. The problem is that Electro priests only have 1 wound, so a feel no pain on a 1 wound model, even in a 4-up, while good, each fail is a dead model, and they lose a lot of utility quick. And if you are not properly trading with them, you're just wasting points. So to me, the Dominus is fringe. Again, if Electro Priest got better, we might bump them all up. But I don't see myself bringing a Dominus because I'm just not bringing Electro Priest. Next, we have the Techno Archaeologist. Techno Archaeologist is essentially your deep strike denial leader here. And, it's only 45 points. He can attach to anything. I will usually go ahead and attach them to a Vanguard or a Ranger, put them in the back, and just have them screen out until I don't have to worry about a lot of drops anymore, and then I'll just move the unit out. Other than that, there's not really much to the Techno Archaeologist. He adds 1 to the objective control of models in our unit, so he can make it really difficult to shift a unit of Rangers that he's in off an objective. That's why I like to start him in my deployment zone. I bring the Archaeologist a lot. It's a decent choice. It's definitely not needed, but if you have the extra points, it's decent. Again, I wouldn't waste an enhancement on him, but just given the ability to kind of screen out your backfield, especially, it's easy to kind of screen with that mech because usually you're kind of forming a gun line and you got a lot of units. So, I don't know how much the utility is worth it on them, but it's definitely kept my opponents out of my backfield having a Techno Archaeologist. So I'm gonna put him in decent. Probably like here, like maybe in front of the destroyers. No, the destroyers are good. We're gonna put him right here, right smack dab in the middle of decent. Next up, we have the man, the myth, the legend himself, Belisarius Call. So Call is a great model, and he's got some ups. He's got a great shooting weapon. Can really melt somebody's face off. He's got a lot of melee attacks. He's got a pretty good suite of Primarch type abilities. The one you're going to pick most of all is going to be his reroll hit rolls of 1. But he can also make himself into a battle line unit and can also give him the army a benefit of cover aura. Probably the least one you're going to use. He can also go through walls, which is really cool. So you can kind of send him through a ruin and not have to worry about it. He's got lone op if he's within 3 of another Mechanicus unit. He's your standard epic hero. It's 150 points. It's okay. It's fairly competitive. Um, I can see. I like to take him in like a Skitarii Hunter cohort, just because I can turn on battle line still and do all that there. Um, but he works on a lot of different lists. He definitely works in a Halos Creed because you can, you're reliably getting a lot of you're reliably in the um, Conqueror Doctrine there, so he can kind of sit back and just give rerolls to like your Scorpius disintegrators if you want, or you can get him involved and let him benefit from some extra AP on some of his melee weapons, which really gives him a whole different level of attack power there. But he's 150 points. I have a lot of trouble fitting him in the list sometimes, just because of the cost, which isn't terrible for T8 10 wound 2 up, uh, 2 up 4 up save. So he also self heals for D3, which is not bad. He's a decent choice. Put him. I'm gonna put him ahead of the robots because I feel like you could definitely get Belisarius in more detachments than you can get the robots. So I'm gonna put him at the top of decent there. Next, we have probably my least favorite model in Warhammer 40K, and that is the Sidonian Skatros. Um, the model looks dumb. Um, it's a single model with precision, with a gun that only at best does 3 wounds and there's no devastating, so there's no way to get around someone's invul. So why are you bringing this? And 3 damage is only going to kill the saddest of leaders. So to me, if you own one, it should be collecting dust. That's all I'm going to say about the Skatros. I just don't see the point. I don't like these kind of units. It doesn't fill a role. I mean, you can get more sniper power out of in a trans arquebus rifle in your Rangers or your Vanguard if you want. It just doesn't make sense to me to have this. Next, we have the Cybernetica Datasmith. The Datasmith's okay. I mean, you're only ever bringing a Datasmith if you're bringing robots. The Datasmith on its own doesn't really do anything. The Datasmith in Halo's Creed's a windmill slam, but that's probably about it. Maybe okay in the robot cohort as well. We're gonna put him at the end of decent, just because he's attached to a unit that's only decent. So we'll put him at the end of decent. And then after that, we have finally, and maybe not surprisingly, we have the Tech Priest Engine Seer. Essentially, your Tech Marine for Adeptus Mechanicus. Not a bad unit, um, but again, doesn't really do much for us. It can heal D3 to any model within 3, and it can give enemy vehicle, our vehicle units a 5 up feel no pain. I mean, I don't really know how great that is. I mean, I guess you can help to keep some robots alive. Robots with a 5 up invul with a 6 up mortal bounce back and a 5 up feel no pain could be cool. Hailing D3 mortal or D3 wounds a turn. That could be something. Or you can keep one of your disintegrators or onagers going for a little while. To me, it's fringe at best. Um, I can honestly see myself bringing it more than the Dominus, just because it's how little I bring Electro-priest. I mean, I want to like Electro-priest. I have 10 Fulgurites. I don't have any Corpus Guard, but I have 10 Fulgurites. But yeah, no, I'm gonna say the Engine Seer here is infringed. It's just, I don't know, it just doesn't do enough. Um, The 5 of them in Feel No Pain's cute, but just not enough to make any of my lists. So this has been my Adeptus Mechanicus unit tier list. Please go ahead and let me know what you think about this list. What would you change? What's your opinions? I want to hear about them. Go ahead and like the video if you enjoyed watching, and if you could, please go ahead and leave us a sub. We're channel's growing, and really happy about it, and really want to try to start bringing some more content and better improved content, and we're working on it. So we appreciate the support, and this is Wounded on Sixes signing out.